You're listening to Malmborg Report, where we discuss the intersection of creativity, work, and the systems in which they are shaped. Welcome to Malmborg Report. My special guest today is Kyle Pettis, a labor organizer in the trucking industry. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm curious about your effort and the scope of it. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so we're involved with a organization called the United Drayage Drivers Association. So we have a interest in organizing all the drayage drivers really across the whole country, but where we've really started our efforts are in the Port Newark in New Jersey. There is a concentrated effort on behalf of our organization, the American Communist Party, to be working directly with the UDDA for the purpose of really disseminating very vital information to the truckers in drayage at that port. Essentially, what's been going on right now is a lot of these drivers are being misclassified according to New Jersey's newly adopted ABC-style laws that have been enforced through arbitration against certain companies already in the Port of Newark. But majority of the companies are still operating under the old employment model that was, again, misclassifying W-2 employees as 1099s. So we have a lot of guys who think that they're independent contractors who are getting all of the, risk side of being an independent contractor without really any of the reward factor. For example, they're required to cover their own fuel costs. They're required to cover the maintenance of their own vehicles that they're providing, but in no way, shape, or form are they getting any sort of leverage in the ability to negotiate a fair freight rate with the, freight distributors. So there's a sort of double-edged sword here for most of these guys. They are getting cut from both ends from freight managers, and they don't have really any seat at the table when it comes to an organized voice of any kind that is advocating on their behalf. And so that's where we're trying to get them into the UDDA. The ultimate goal with the UDDA is to get them unionized across the misclassification boundary, because obviously in traditional labor organizing, 1099 independent contractors are not eligible for union status. But due to the court precedent set in the STG case in New Jersey and the prevalence of the ABC laws in the state of New Jersey, we now have an opportunity to organize these guys.
Yeah. That is a common thread where there's either a new legal precedent or a court ruling, similar to when the NLRB ruled that independent contracting drivers for Amazon, or rather that they were employees of the third party, were actually classifiable as Amazon drivers. Those sort of things create a confluence where organizing isn't just an opportunity, but it's like vital. So at this point, is there any particular legal maneuver that you're hoping to achieve in the near term to consolidate the effort?
Our strategy is not as concerned with the legal maneuverings, because a lot of these things have already been established. For example, like I said, the new ABC ruling in New Jersey, that was a appellate court decision. So
Right.
we were already at basically the highest court of the land, just below the Supreme Court. We're not too concerned about the legal aspect. Really, the legal ball is in our court right now, much more than it is in the Port Authority or in these companies. And it's funny that you mention Amazon, because I think that this sort of structure that is going on down at the Port of Newark, it's very similar to that DSP model that Amazon is employing to, really hyper exploit those guys who think that they're starting their own business. It's very similar, and it's been going on at the Port of Newark since 1980 when Jimmy Carter did deregulation. So it's much more entrenched. It also has its own particular sort of nasty elements within the Port of Newark. For example, we have guys who are essentially, they'll rent out 4 or 5 trucks, and they'll have 4 or 5 trucks. They'll go and rent those to a carrier. They'll utilize their own MC and then have 3 guys filling out those other trucks that are technically now employed under them, that are employed under this person. And it becomes this ridiculous sort of ladder where somebody at each level is siphoning the paycheck of a guy below him and everything else. And it's a complete mess. There is really just anarchy prevailing at the Port of Newark, and a lot of guys are really getting taken advantage of. What we've really tried to come up with is some common sense solutions, in our opinions, things that we are hoping to get some form of master freight agreement across the entire port that, hopefully is a union behind it that's going to be doing enforcement. One of the ideas, I should say, is what we call a two-paycheck system. And some contracts in the Teamsters actually already have this. I've talked to some guys in California who are currently on this. And essentially, if you are somebody who owns your vehicle, your bobtail, and you're trying to still work for one of these companies, instead of being an independent contractor, you're going to get paid for your labor portion as a W-2 employee. And then we're going to take your truck, and that's going to be under a 1099 paycheck. So essentially what we call is a two-paycheck system. You as a laborer are getting your, no more free 8 hours a day at the dock waiting on detention time, which is a huge problem for these guys. Some guys are waiting 8 hours on detention with no pay. We want to cut that out. All hours worked, all hours paid. You get your pay for your labor down there at the port. And then when they're using your truck, technically, the company is utilizing your vehicle with you driving it for the purposes of making their money, right? Hauling their freight. We want to make sure that you're getting compensated, not completely, of course, you still own the truck, but we want to make sure you're getting compensated some amount under a 1099 status for the use of your truck.
Right. So it's like simultaneously you're an employee, possibly eligible for overtime. And meanwhile, you're bringing your own equipment and you're essentially reimbursed or compensated for that.
Precisely. Yeah. I don't see why, unless the companies are really being unreasonable, why they would have a problem with that. And additionally, one thing I would like to say, it's not just about the overtime, which of course is a big financial thing to look at for these guys, but most of these guys, if you're a 1099 especially, none of those guys have health insurance. They don't have any benefit package whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a significant barrier. And by creating the employment status, you could definitely pull that off, which would be a significant life improvement, because I imagine most of these truckers would be making too much to get like Medicaid or something like that. So it's like you're just kind of SOL if you don't have that status.
Yeah, you're having to go to the marketplace as a private citizen, and we live in America, so good luck.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a very compelling effort and one that seems timely. On the ground, though, what are you hearing from drivers? Have you gotten a lot of stories or sort of like energy from them?
Yeah, I mean, we went out. We're going to be going out every other week. We're due to go out on the 19th. We'll be out there distributing more pamphlets. And on these pamphlets, it gives you all of the information you need. It gives you a QR code to a link tree so you can get plugged into the UDDA. You can check out, there's a more social group. It's called New Jersey Peer, where just everybody's there, kind of like a town hall. You can check out us, the ACP, acp.us. So we have that, and inside the brochure, of course, it goes over the STG core ruling. It gives them all of the information point blank, right where they need it, very digestible. And so we're going out there every other week with my guys from the ACP, and we're just distributing these flyers. We're having great conversations because everybody's clogged up along the road in detention time, waiting to get their load anyways. We might as well come up, give them a pamphlet. We usually bring coffee and donuts, so we're making their day a little bit better, and handing out these pamphlets. And so far, we have had zero complaints from the drivers. In fact, every single guy I talk to, they love it. There's a lot of food trucks out there at the Port of Newark. I walked up to one of the food trucks, and guy turns around and he sees the pamphlet in my hand, and before I could even get a word out, he goes, "Oh, finally getting a union in here. This is crazy. I've been waiting for this." Everybody's pumped about it. The energy's there. Everyone's high morale. Everybody's ready to go. These guys have been getting taken advantage of for so long. The normal tricks in the book that a company's got to try and break labor, it's just not going to work here. I'm sorry. Like I said, we started one day with 400 pamphlets, right? English and Spanish, by the way, because there's a lot of guys who are Spanish speakers down there. So 400 pamphlets, we ran out in 2 hours.
Wow.
All of them. Not a single guy turned away. I mean, it was phenomenal. And we're expecting similar experiences every time we go back. We're mixing up the hours, the days that we're there, make sure we can catch as many people as possible.
That sounds like a really strong effort to begin with, but also the reception sounds like something very easy to work with. And hopefully people can get energized and ready to take some steps to secure their own future in that way. That's very good. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I saw your previous episode. You were on a trucking podcast. I don't have the name on the top of my head, but you started in the industry, right?
Basically, I was a trucker before I became full-time over here at the American Communist Party for several years. Before that, I was a merchant mariner, actually. And before that, I worked in factories. I worked in blue-collar trades.
Yeah.
So I've been kind of the blue-collar guy my whole life, but I really appreciated my time trucking. Still got my CDLA, could go back anytime. I'm still a member in good standing at my Teamster local. And, got a great respect for the Teamsters and what they do, and always have enjoyed my time in trucking, always enjoyed my time in the Teamsters. And, my job as a full-time organizer with the American Communist Party, I very much pay attention to trucking. I mean, it is the lifeblood of this country. It is what really separates the American economy from a lot of other economies as far as the strength of our logistics center. The key to, organized labor across the entire country, no matter what labor sector you're organizing, trucks are essential. Truckers are essential. And, to me, it's very much what Jimmy Hoffa said. Love or hate the guy, he was right about one thing, which is if you have a truck, brought it to you. And we want to bring that mentality back, especially with this drayage campaign, at a point in time where the American economy is very much an import-export, economy. We have to realize that the guys working drayage at these ports, they are the lifeline. They are the artery that keeps America's heart pumping. So if you are out there in a cornfield in Kansas and you are going to the general store, all of that stuff, more than likely that you're purchasing and bringing home to your families, it came through a port 9 times out of 10, and it was hauled by a drayage driver. We want people to realize that, and we want people to understand the pivotal role that these guys play and treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And additionally, we want them to have a seat at the table, to actually have the ability to speak to the powers that be and negotiate on their own behalf. And that's really what this unionization campaign is about.
100%, because no one in the U.S., I imagine, would want to see what would happen if there ever was, like a shutdown of the labor, right? Because the results would be so instantaneously, I guess, not to overstate it, but devastating, right? Because as you say, if you have it, it came by truck. So, to avoid all that, having good conversations with companies and workers at the same table is how you keep things running.
100%. And, the other part of this is Port of Newark alone. If there was to be some sort of labor dispute, and for whatever reason the companies did not want to be reasonable, did not want to play ball, did not want to sit down and recognize the union or, actually engage in contract negotiation, shutting down that one port, for a day, I mean, it would be a ripple effect on the entire American economy. We hope that the companies are respectful of them and are willing to actually engage in dialogue, and we're hoping to achieve recognition. But if that's not met,
that's
our guys still got to fight for their rights. That's the reality. If the ball is in the company's court in that regard, they're the ones going to be making those choices.
No, that's why I kind of like to say, kind of jokingly to some degree, is that in many ways, labor organizing is also very friendly to the companies because it's presenting them a different option, right? Which is to preemptively show respect, make investments in the people that run their enterprises, and that keeps everyone going.
Right. And so far, the scoreboard says that the companies, they don't typically go that route. They want to fight it. They don't like change.
Yeah, and the change happens one way or the other because people have to make. There's some baseline where if you're not making enough to survive, you have no other recourse, right? So, it will work out, and I really hope that you're able to do it in a way that gets the most for these workers and these drivers, that's a great thing you're doing. I appreciate that you do that.
100%. Thank you so much. At the end of the day, it's all about these guys in these trucks, and we just want what's best for them, and we want them to have their own voice and their own seat at the table.
Very much so, yeah. Because I'm also organizing right now. I'm involved in the Amazon Fulfillment Center efforts. I work at an Amazon just outside of Newburgh, New York. And, it's a place that has a lot of tactics. I'm sure you're pretty aware of Amazon's extensive union busting and all that sort of stuff. But these fights are happening everywhere, in every sector. And yeah, I think that you always need people who are there with information and, guidance for workers to take control of their own situation, because that's what it comes down to, is that workers have the power and, that's how they get a raise, basically. Or just a
100%.
better work-life balance even.
I mean, a lot of it, I think most Americans, and this is kind of an unfortunate reality in a way, they can take, not getting as much pay as they really deserve, for their own selves. They can take that. They can take that for decades. They'll adjust. We're proud and pragmatic. That's the reality. But the second that they feel they're being disrespected on a fundamental level, that is what makes the unionization campaign. When guys at Amazon, and I've been out at the strike line at the Amazon facilities. We got guys who are also involved in organizing at Amazon and other areas of the country. For those Amazon guys, it's less about the hard numbers, as I'm sure you realize. It's more about the overwhelming feeling that they're not even treated as human beings.
Right.
And that's the number one thing that gets people to actually get activated and get organized. I got to tell you, it's the same feeling that these drayage drivers have. They feel like they're just not even human to these companies. That morale is so high, they're ready to go, and they're extra motivated to get a contract in there.
So another question would be, in terms of obviously you've been going on some podcasts and trying to get the word out that way. To what extent is sort of the public side of this effort core to your strategy?
Well, so far, I mean, we really don't have that much media focus. Of course, I've been on a couple shows, but we haven't really. We've used like a very small percentage of what our potential is to really get that media message out there for the public. We're waiting until certain parts of our campaign to start really going after the issues here and to confront the companies in the public sphere.
Right.
The main point now is to get on shows like the trucking shows to get the word out, not just the Port of Newark guys, because we can pretty confidently get those guys ourselves, but we want to hear what's going on in the other ports across this country. We don't see the UDDA as being a New Jersey phenomenon only. And I've had a lot of interest expressed in certain areas of California, Texas, even Florida, and all up and down the East Coast, just really everywhere. Guys are starting to hear what's going on. They're having the same issues in their states, and they are very interested in what happens at the Port of Newark.
Yeah, I think when it comes to doing things like a podcast in terms of being part of an ongoing labor effort, it's not just about attention. It's also about having things to share with people. I've had coworkers of mine on, or people who work at other Amazon facilities, and it's just useful to be able to send that to another coworker and be like, okay, these are some of the issues. So whenever you've got like a nice little clip or a good soundbite from one of these things, that itself is useful in the direct organizing context.
100%. Yeah, we've really utilized media in the form of videos, and we have our own sort of media apparatus where we can take clips like you're saying, and we can create effective agitational, propaganda, as it's called, and put it directly in the Facebook groups and in the Twitter spaces of these truckers. It resonates with them instantly, and they get signed up. So we try to use the 21st century and actually use the information technology that we have available to us and really move with that. So, this is we're trying to set kind of a new paradigm in labor organizing. It's not just in-person stuff, although that is very important. You know, nothing can really replace
Right.
the guy with the handshake and the smile and, you know, having the heart-to-heart conversation with these guys. That can never really be replaced fully. But what we can absolutely do is augment that with being in these Twitter spaces with these truckers, getting in their Facebook groups and engaging with them when they're not on the clock. And it's really a full-time effort on behalf of our party and in partnership with the UDDA. So, and all the UDDA guys and pretty much everybody in our party is still working their full-time jobs, still out there making a living. It's just all volunteer, besides myself, of course, truly trying to get these things done. It's a massive effort, but we're hoping that it has a massive payout for these drivers.
100%. Whenever you're taking on these kind of systemic situations that involve, you know, sectors of the economy or mega corporations, the weight of it can definitely be felt. But when you're fighting for something that is as common sense and universal as fair wages, fair working conditions for people, that's very motivating and can keep you going during the harder times. On one last note, would you mind giving a bit of a rundown of maybe some of the information? If you have that link tree, as you said, to put it in the chat, that would be good.
Yeah, I can get that link tree for you. So, you know, you can find my organization and with the American Communist Party and the Director of Personnel. You can find our information at ACP Maine on Twitter. You can also go to acp.us, and that's our website. And then we also have the UDDA, which is the trucking group that we're partnering with, that we're getting the truckers organized into. And I'll provide the link tree that will link to their Facebook page. And they have a Facebook page for the New Jersey Pier that's also available there, which is more of a town hall and a social Facebook group for everybody to kind of, you know, vent and have a good time. That's what we have going right now. That's where you can find us, and I'll provide that link tree for you.
It's always good to be plugged in with someone in a different industry because it seems like organizing is kind of a small world in a way, and the area I'm working is not horribly far from Newark. I think anytime we're aware of what's going on the ground and people need backup or they need more support, it's really cool to be able to spread the word and know what's going on in a different sector nearby. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you ever need any help down the Amazon facility in Newburgh, you feel free to hit my line.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on. Great to meet you, and good luck with everything.
Absolutely. You have a good one.
All right. Take care. Thanks for listening to Malmborg Report. If you enjoyed this episode, follow me on social media at It's John Malmborg and subscribe to Malmborg Report on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Want to stay in the loop? Sign up for my email list at johnmalmborg.com. And if you'd like to support the show directly, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Malmborg Report. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.